Most people use ChatGPT like a search engine and completely miss its real power. If you're only asking surface level questions, you're leaving valuable insight and money on the table. I've spent months refining this prompt to make ChatGPT a powerful tool for social listening so you can understand what your audience actually cares about and hear it in their own words. Today, I'll walk you through exactly how I use it to extract buyer language, uncover emerging themes, and get clearer on what really drives buyer decisions. If you want messaging that lands and campaigns that convert, this is how you build it. So let me say something that usually surprises people. ChatGPT is not secretly plugged into what your customers and your consumers care about. So when you type into there, tell me the top pain points and motivations of my target audience, it gives you really confident sounding nonsense. But if you do it correctly, it can be one of the most powerful audience research assistants that you've ever had. So instead of starting with AI, we're going to start by defining the scope. Get crystal clear on what it is you're trying to learn. What's the purpose? What time period? What platforms are you going to use? I personally like to use Reddit and Quora, sometimes YouTube, to get at those somewhat unfiltered conversations that people are having with each other. I've seen other people use LinkedIn because you can get to role-specific insights that way, but usually when people are posting on LinkedIn, it's very, very buttoned up and not something that you're going to get the emotional and social drivers. So you're going to want to think about these things beforehand. For example, you may want a founder sentiment towards AI marketing tools in the last 30 days based in the US, not conversations from brands or agencies that are likely to be curated conversations. So getting clear on the scope, being tight about your constraints reduces those hallucinations. So the next step is going to be inputting the data. And there's two ways to do this. The first is the best option for getting high quality responses and minimizing those hallucinations. And then your second option is more of your quick and dirty feel. I tend to use this quite a bit, really just to sanity check your gut assumptions, right? So we don't do assumptions here. We always lean on data. And this is the second option, is a quick and dirty way to pressure test your assumptions. So let's talk more about option one. Option one, you're going to upload your own data through some tool that you have, whether you've downloaded mentions or you have a connection to an API or an MCP. I particularly like, and this is not sponsored by the way, I particularly like Brandwatch and Sprout Social for social listening insights. So you want to get those data and that mentioned from a source that you already know and trust and export it or integrate it into your generative AI tool. That's option one. Option two is more of the quick and dirty approach for low risk decisions, or you're trying to just pressure test your own way of thinking about something. So this is the prompt that I use to have the tool pull conversations from, like I mentioned, Reddit or Quora or online reviews that are relevant to your scope. So without further ado, here's the prompt. So I'm not going to read all of this. It's quite lengthy. Like I said, I took months of refining and getting this to where it continuously and repeatably produces quality insights. So the first section of it, though, is again giving it a role to play. You're going to tell it, don't make anything up, act as an expert in social media listening and driver sentiment analysis, analyze, insert your audience here, authored posts, and creator reviews. No brands, sponsored, or industry sources, again, because you don't want that highly curated conversations. You want something that's more off the cuff. From across, insert your sources that you like, and you're wanting those public conversations about either a particular brand, a particular product, or an industry, and you may want to go ahead and constrain that to a specific location. Most of the conversations tend to come out of the US, but you may want to look elsewhere. The methodology for this is going to include both a quantitative analysis, so you see how your brand stacks up to the competition in terms of total mentions. And so this is really helpful if you want to see how overall awareness is trending. Is there more more top of mind space that your brand is occupying now than when you ran this analysis maybe a few months ago. So the quantitative analysis helps you to understand how top of mind your brand is and how talked about it is versus your competition. And then the qualitative analysis and the insights really help you understand how your target audience talks about your problem in their own language. And this is incredibly important for when you think about messaging or speaking to your audiences and the language that they resonate with best. Then the prompt goes forward and synthesizes this, bringing this into 2 to 3 takeaways that you can use, and then a little bit of specifics around the output format just so that you can see it in a nice and clean way. Now, hear me when I say this. This is the prompt, but you are going to need to, especially if you're doing the quick and dirty version, manually clean and validate the data before you move forward with any sort of making decisions for your business. So make sure you still have the human in the loop and you are having someone who understands your business very well clean and validate the data before you take action on it. So when you can decode the language that your audience already uses, your messaging doesn't just improve, it starts converting. But most teams are wasting budget on copy and campaigns that never connect because they skipped this step. This is exactly why I created the CMO's budget rescue checklist. It shows where you're wasting spend and how to refocus on what actually works. It's linked right at the top of the description. So let's keep going and talk about what ChatGPT can't do and how to work around it. I like to think of ChatGPT as a happy puppy trying to please you and tell you what it thinks you want to hear so that you continue the conversation. That's really the algorithm's goal, is to continue this conversation with you and keep you engaged. So when you think about this prompt, again, you're going to start with giving it a role to play. I went ahead and did this so that you guys can see it in real time, the output that it gives you. And I was using the brand Groons because that is a brand that me and my family are obsessed about over at the moment. But one of the things that I'm curious about is who their target audience is. So I didn't really know, and I left that blank because I know I really like it, but my middle school son also really likes it. So wasn't sure who their target audience was, but then went forward with the rest of the prompt. We're not including promos or press content because that's too curated. We'll do the quantitative analysis and the qualitative so we can hear how people talk about it in their own language. And you can see how it formats their results for you. But what comes next after you get this beautiful output from ChatGPT is where human oversight and human understanding is non-negotiable, in my opinion. So you're going to then take this data and interpret what it means for you. So yes, that may mean go link by link and validate it, whether it's true, what the context might be around the conversation. So interpret what this means for your business. But then you're also going to want to see, is this aligned, the suggestions that it gives you, is it aligned with your brand? And will it help you to stand out in the marketplace? Maybe it's a little too soft in the language and you need something that's going to be more disruptive or more bold. So you want to have a human consider these things. And then you're also going to want to have a human think about your goals as a business, the resources and capabilities of your organization. Can they actually execute on these recommendations? That needs to be done by a human, no replacement. So now we're going to think about how do you take all of this input from ChatGPT and build it into some strategic decisions. So I've used these insights to help think through new market expansion opportunities. So what problems are people looking to solve? Are they new problems that we really hadn't thought about solving before? That could be a new offer opportunity. Are people using existing products in new ways? Like one of my favorite examples is the Heinz ketchup bottle. Anyone who's old enough to remember how the ketchup bottle used to look, it used to have the cap at the top, the glass bottle, and you'd have to shake it or mix it quite a bit before you could use it. Otherwise, you get a pool of ketchup water on your fries when you first use it. But what they saw in doing research was that people would store those bottles upside down in their refrigerators. And so they saw that the existing product was being used in a new way. And they said, instead of having our customers take this extra step, why don't we just design packaging where the opening or I'm sure there's a scientific word for that. Any packaging gurus, tell me what that word is. Where the opening of the ketchup bottle is at the bottom and they don't have to deal with separation anyway. So that is how you can use these insights to find new use cases for existing products. But then you also want to look at strengths and weaknesses of your competitors. So how's your audience talking about your product relative to others on the marketplace? What are some of the trade-offs that they're having to make? And that can also help you with your product development strategy or even your marketing creative. I'm seeing a lot of different ads showing, here's how our product stacks up to the competition, and this would be a great use case for that. Then you're going to want to think through new campaign development, like I was just saying. What kind of messaging or positioning can you take from this and insert it into your campaign development? Okay, so when you stop using ChatGPT for answers and start using it for patterns, it becomes one of the best research tools on your desk. But social listening is just one piece of the strategy. If you want to see how I use ChatGPT across my full market research process, from testing hypotheses to running competitive scans, watch this next video and I'll walk you through it step by step.